Welcome to the Pizza Buffet, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook here on the Hammer Betting Network. We are live on the Forward Progress channel on YouTube and at Forward NFL on Twitter. As usual, no different today. Going to run through the card this weekend, top to bottom, rotation number order. I'll lock in any bets that I think are worth making, and I'm going to lock them all in against Pinnacle's lines, as Pinnacle is the official sportsbook partner of the Pizza Buffet. Pinnacle, the world's sharpest sportsbook, now available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. Not available to those in the U.S. This will be a little bit of a different show today, as since we only got 4 games to talk about, lines are pretty efficient, pretty sharp. I'll still give my breakdown on those, but in about 20 minutes' time, I will welcome in John Lageza, who does some great writing for The Athletic, both NFL, MLB. Big fan of his, especially from a props perspective, as he really finds a unique way to play props a lot of times. I'll bring him in about 20 minutes or so to break down the props for this weekend's card. He was supposed to appear on Forward Progress yesterday. We had some technical difficulties, but nonetheless, we are going to get John in here at some point to break down the props. As usual, bet responsibly. I know everybody does want to bet this weekend. It's the NFL, 4 standalone games. Of course you do. I completely get it. So do I. But looking at Pinnacle right now, they're taking $100,000 a click on NFL sides for today's games. $40,000 for tomorrow's games. These numbers are pretty strong. That doesn't mean you can't win. Just means that the sportsbook has a lot of confidence in the numbers that they are throwing out there for today's games and tomorrow's games. So be very cognizant of that. Anything I do lock in today, as we go through the board, will probably be a smaller play. But let's get into it. I will bring up betstamp. You can download betstamp on Android or iOS. You can check out the website, betstamp.app.app. I would highly recommend it if you're doing line shopping, tracking your own bets, finding other bettors that you think are worth tailing or potentially fading in some cases. But this is today's card, and we will start with the early game, Jacksonville and Kansas City. So looking at the full board, Pinnacle obviously hanging like this off-market 10, as they tend to do, which is essentially the equivalent of this 9.5. So Kansas City money today, out to 9.5 for the most part across the board. Total is at 52.5. One thing a little bit different about today is that we have an updated weather forecast. We thought over the course of this week that there might be some weather issues specifically in this game. This game is going to be a very wet game. You're looking at a mix of rain and snow throughout, probably snow later on in the game, potentially some heavy downpours as the game goes on, but essentially these teams are playing in soaking wet conditions today. There's not much wind. However, there might be a small downgrade to the passing games because of the heavy rain that is expected. So that's one thing right now to keep an eye on with Jacksonville and Kansas City. Now, a lot of people have been comparing Jacksonville to the Cincinnati Bengals of last year. Good quarterback, didn't have the best regular season. Maybe they have a playoff run in them. And some people have been kind of crapping on that point of view. I kind of think that's a decent comparison. If you look at the Bengals' metrics throughout the season last year, they were very much an average team, and then they put it together in the stretch run. The difference is I don't like the Jags' personnel on defense as much as I like the Bengals' personnel on defense last year. And I think when we break down this matchup in particular, and why I think it's going to be a challenge for Jacksonville to get stops, these defensive metrics that have been inflated in the latter half of the year are, my opinion, purely a product of schedule, because they've played a lot of bad offenses down the stretch. They played the Texans, they played the Titans twice, they played the Ravens, they played the Jets. Anytime they took a step up in class in the latter half of the year, whether it was the Chargers last week, the Cowboys, the Lions, they gave up 30 or more points. The defense didn't look good in the process. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that overall. In particular, where Jacksonville's defense struggles, defending tight ends and explosive plays in the receiving game out of the opposing team's backfield. So Travis Kelce, Jerick McKinnon, guys who are very effective and popular in terms of usage in this offense. I think they're going to have big games today. I think it's going to be very difficult to slow them down. I mean, look at Travis Kelce's prop totals for today. And that tells you all you need to really know about the expectations for him going into today's game, which are like, what do we got for reception? 6.5 juiced over, receiving yards 82.5. Anytime touchdown is juiced like, Pinnacle minus 146 for him to score. You're laying minus 146. So the expectation is that he's going to have a big game today. And I just don't see the Jags defense being able to stop this. Now, ultimately, the Jags have been a very good second half team this year. You look at their point differential over the course of the season. Honestly, it might just be noise. There might be signal to it, but minus 11 point differential in the first half, plus 65 in the second half. They've done a very good job in the second half, making adjustments very similar to the Bengals of last season. And another comparison that is drawn between these two teams. But as mentioned, for those who followed the content over the course of the week on Forward Progress, I expected, if anything, the line to move a little bit towards the Chiefs. We saw that money now. If it gets out to 10, totally understand why someone would have interest in the Jags. At that point, you need to, 11 to lose. However, this is the same line we saw between these teams earlier in the year in terms of the closing number. And I honestly just think it's a fair line. Ravens. Andy Reid. Kansas City coming off the bye. They get a little bit of a bump for the bye week, home field advantage in the playoffs, but Jacksonville gets a bump because they were better in the latter half of the year overall. So not a game that I'm betting on today in terms of side or total. Obviously, I'm rooting for a teaser that I think many people out there are rooting for the exact same thing. But at this current market number, I'm not a fan. If you forced me to pick and lay bets at these market prices, I'd rather be on Chiefs minus 10 plus 111, and I'd rather be on the over 52.5. Also mentioned first half line earlier in the week, which is now steamed up to 6.5 as the total's gone up. But those 5.5s from earlier in the week are long gone. Giants and Eagles. So we're now seeing the Eagles out to minus 8. This was one that I didn't know where it was going to go necessarily because the Giants took a ton of money on game day last week, got it off of 3 to 2.5. The Eagles have been a pretty popular side with sharps going on a couple years now where they tend to catch money in the market. But we got our answer today, a little bit of Eagles money, total settling in at 48. Last time these teams played, for those who watched the Pizza Buffet, I played an alternate spread of minus 20.5 on the Eagles. That hit. I think that this is a nightmare matchup for the New York Giants. And I think in our heads, because they had such a great performance last week against the Vikings, that they are viewed very, very differently than they were even a month ago. And I'm not sure that's correct because the Vikings, in my opinion, and again, just go back to the tape last week, Pizza Buffet last week, the one unit play was the Giants. The Vikings, in my opinion, were a very bad matchup, or good matchup, let's say, for the Giants, whereas I don't think that the Eagles are. And the thing that's really working for the Giants worked last week for them. They have been having a lot more success rushing for pass rushers. Early in the year, for the majority of the year, this has been a super heavy blitz team. Wink Martindale is their defensive coordinator from the Ravens previously, loves to blitz. And this has worked for them in terms of rushing less because Dexter Lawrence has had such a fantastic second half of the year. In the latter half of the year, weeks 9 to 18, he ranked 4th in the NFL in terms of pressure rate from any defensive lineman. The only interior defensive lineman who had a higher pressure rate than him was Cam Hayward. So this has worked for them. The challenge is the Eagles' interior offensive line is very good. In fact, the entire Eagles' offensive line is very good. Lane Johnson back at right tackle as well. I don't think the Giants are going to have the same success if they choose to blitz less. And if they do blitz more, they just do not have the coverage corners, in my opinion, to take away Philly's receivers. It's nice that they have Adoree Jackson back. That's definitely a boost to them. However, that cornerback group is just not good enough on the outside to defend Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So I like the Eagles' opportunity to move the ball, provided that Jalen Hurts isn't hurt. And that's the big if. That's why I didn't play the Eagles, and I just threw them into teasers with the Chiefs. But we don't know in regards to Jalen Hurts. The other side of things, what the Giants did successfully last week, especially Daniel Jones in the running game, very, very different animal with this Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. Very, very different animal. The Eagles generate tons of pressure. The Vikings did not last week. I don't know. This seems very lopsided to me overall. However, it's the NFL. We never know what's going to happen in these games. But if you ask me what would I bet right now, if I had to make a bet on the game, I would be taking the Eagles -8, and I would have I don't even know about the total. I'm pretty much right on 48. It's very, very difficult for me to make a play on the total at all. For those who are going to be watching this game tonight, I will be doing a live watch-along for this over on the Hammer HQ YouTube channel. It's me watching the game, giving my thoughts with some special guests along the way. Adam Chernoff is going to join me, Spreadopedia, Jason Weingarten is going to join me, and Andy Molitor of the Deep Dive podcast is also going to join me. So tune in for that. If you're watching the Giants and Eagles tonight, Hammer HQ YouTube channel, I promise it'll make the game more interesting. Bettors like interacting with other bettors while the game is going on, and we'll have a pretty good broadcast for you for that later on tonight. Let's get into tomorrow. Bengals and Bills. So this is now out to 6. Continuous one-way money on Buffalo this week, which is quote-unquote the sharp side. However, the market is settled here now. So the sharp side, in my opinion, on Buffalo was anywhere around 3.5, 4. You can even argue 5.5 because of where the market is now. But I'm going to play a half unit on Cincinnati, +6, -112. I've been telling myself all week, if Cincinnati gets into this price range, I am going to play them. Obviously, I am concerned with the offensive line injuries. Obviously. Goes without saying, it's an extreme challenge with Cincinnati to block when you're missing your starting left tackle, your starting right guard, your starting right tackle. But ask yourself now whether or not the market has fully accounted for that yet. And at this point, I think they have. Like, we're up to 6. This is not new information, right? You can't just come out and say, I like the Bills now because Cincinnati's missing blockers. You could say that if you feel like it should have moved further, but this is not new information in the market. We've known all week that Cincinnati's going to be without some offensive linemen. And the thought of getting Joe Burrow and basically needing him to lose by a touchdown or more to lose your bet is extremely, extremely appealing to me, despite the offensive line issues. Remember, Cincinnati had major offensive line issues early in the year. They had like a revamped offensive line. They couldn't get it together. They started to do some different things to get them going, putting Burrow in shotgun, getting the ball out of his hands quicker. And Cincinnati still has a very good matchup with their wide receivers on the outside against the Bills cornerbacks. On top of that, Buffalo plays a lot of quote-unquote softer defense, 5 or more defensive backs on the field at one time. Cincinnati's exploited that defense all year long. They're third in success rate whenever they've gone up against 5 or more DBs in the regular season. I just can't get to this number here. So lock it in there. Cincinnati tomorrow, +6, -112 at Pinnacle. And then the final game tomorrow, I'm going to do a double dip onto this one. Everyone who's been watching Forward Progress this week, at this point, a lot of the value on Dallas San Fran over has been sucked out because you go from 45.5 to 46 to 46.5. Now 47, which is the key number here, 47 in terms of NFL totals. However, I still think this should be above 47, and I don't think the Cowboys should be 4-point underdogs. So I'll go a half unit on each of those. Dallas +4, over 47. I do think that there's going to be scoring in this game. I don't think both teams are going to come out and run the ball down the throat of the opposing team. I just don't see that happening, especially when they have advantages against the opposing team's secondaries. I do think we see Dak and Brock Purdy get the ball out of their hands quickly and get it into the hands of their skill position players, and we go from there. Basically, they do damage like they have done all year long. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk on the outside, Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, Cowboys CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard. This is a game to me where I expected this to be above 47 for the entire week. It's there now. In terms of the Dallas Cowboys spread, if you go through the entire year, week by week, and you look at the market rankings of these teams, where they were viewed in the market, there was really never a point where you would have got this much separation between the two teams. You have a bad scheduling spot for the Cowboys, for sure, which has to be accounted for. But this is like the widest gap we've seen between these two teams pretty much all season. And I don't think it's warranted. I think these are much closer than people realize. And you also have the concern of Brock Purdy finally going up against a quality pass rush. I think he might be able to overcome that. He has been very good at extending plays this year. When he's had 3 or more seconds to throw, he has a 47% success rate. That would put him 4th in the NFL. Jimmy Garoppolo has a 35% success rate when he has 3 or more seconds to throw. That would put him 24th. So I think that the opportunity is still there. But overall, I just can't get to the number here. So those are going to be the plays for this weekend at the current market lines. So pulling up the current market lines, the bets are for tomorrow. Cincy +6 -112, Dallas San Fran over 47, and Dallas +4 -106. I think, Will, you're saying this sarcastically. Are you a Cowboys fan? You know I am. You see the Cowboys symbol behind me. Everyone who's watched these videos for years knows that I can think unbiased. I mean, I bet the Bucs for crying out loud last week. What a horrible bet that was. But I bet the Bucs in a playoff game against the Cowboys. So you guys know at this point that, I'm not a biased Cowboys fan. Let's put it that way. And I've seen this floating around as well. Tight end touchdown parlay, Kelsey, Goddard, Schultz, and Knox. I don't hate it. I like the matchups for a lot of those. I saw someone, it eludes me, who posted this earlier today, but played $10 on all these guys to get first touchdown score in a parlay that paid like $210K, which, I mean, obviously super long shot, but I absolutely don't hate it. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We did cover props on Forward Progress yesterday, and we're going to cover some more here with a person that I'm very fond of, have a lot of respect for, have been following him for years as part of The Athletic, where he does some MLB and NFL writing, and also part of the Mayo Media Network. John Lageza, fellow Paisano, hops up and in on the pizza buffet. I mean, it just writes itself. Pizza buffet with John and Rob, right?
You're not kidding, man. Rob, it is so great to work with you. It's kind of surreal in a way. I've been consuming your work as a fan and fellow degenerate for a long time. Well, why is it all my favorite people are Cowboys fans? My brother-in-law is one of my favorite people to talk football about, and he's just this enormous Cowboy fan. They just I'm surrounded by him, it seems like.
So for me, the story is this. My father, when I grew up, hated the Cowboys. And because I was a shitty kid, I was like, all right, this is my team. So that's my fandom. I got to see them win 3 Super Bowls when I was younger, but since then it's just been a lot of pain for me, John.
Well, that's very funny you mentioned that. My little brother is an anti-fan. That's what we always called him. So we were like Yankees and Jets, kind of very local where I'm in New York. And my brother took on all the teams of the time. So he's a Dallas Cowboy fan. They were great in the 90s. He was a Chicago Bull. He's a Chicago Bulls fan. They were great at the time. So it's just very funny, right? How that happens. It's not always direct lineage. Sometimes it's like a counter, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like every other team in other sports, I've been able to flip my fandom because, the Blue Jays won 2 World Series in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I was rooting against them during those games because my father's a huge Blue Jays fan, right? So I'm rooting for the Braves, I'm rooting for the Phillies. But I got to a point in life where I'm like, why am I cheering against all these Toronto teams? I might as well start cheering for them. But because the NFL doesn't have a Toronto team, I've always stuck with the Cowboys fandom. So I've lived through the Quincy Carter years and, just like, it's been a tough go, but I mean, fingers crossed that possibly this could be the year for me, John.
Yeah, I think the lows make the highs, more appreciative for us.
Completely agree with you. Like seeing a playoff win last week was, it's almost surreal because he's suffered for so long. But anyways, John, let's get into the props for this week. I followed your stuff for years. I think you always have like a unique way to approach props. I know you don't like to lay a lot of juice and you find ways to figure things out, but let's go game by game here.
Yeah.
And we'll start with Kansas City, Jacksonville. We're going to get some wet weather there today, potentially some snow later on in the game. Winds aren't too bad overall. Lots of people love Travis Kelce props in this game today. Obviously, great matchup for Travis Kelce. That's juiced to shit now, basically. Like he's minus 160 anytime touchdown scorer at this point. Anything else you see from Jacksonville, Kansas City that catches your eye for today?
Okay, well, I mean, there was good reason for that, right? Jacksonville plays a ton of cover 3, and that ends up leaving a soft spot in the middle a lot of times for slot or tight end receivers. In, Kelce's case, he's both of those for the Chiefs. So, year to date, they've given up 81 catches, 10, 58, and 7. So, obviously, the public was going to go there, and against a slot, just bottom 3. So, I do see the Kelce props and why. I was looking to combine them because, again, it's not like Kelce's been this big yak guy. It's more been on volume. It's more been sitting down in zones against things like the cover 3. And then it's been high-efficiency work in the red zone. So if I can find like a fantasy point prop, that's where I would like to go for Kelce. I think that's the best way to cover all of the different game scripts. Because again, we're right at the 11th hour, and as you mentioned, props usually move up. So if you're looking to go over, you want to be early. If you want to go under, you want to bet late. Right now, he could come in under all of these props, Rob, and still have a fantastic game, right? He could go 7 for 81 and 1, and all the prop bettors lose. Exactly. And this guy, hung 25 points or whatever fantasy points. So I like him where you can amalgamate stats. Let's see if you like the one that I got. Again, we're getting to the 11th hour. I really had to dig. So it's the other side of the ball, and I'm not really expecting a ton from Jacksonville, but I do think the game script allows itself for, the Jaguars are going to be pushing. So the Kansas City defense off the bat, they've been very good. I don't think they're really getting the respect they should. No 300-yard passers since week 7. And since the week 9 bye, this is the defense allowing 87 passer rating, 182 pass yards a game, 16 TDs to 15 interceptions. Wow. But you have been able to get to them. And, man, it's funny, the stark difference in Lawrence's production when facing man and zone, it's unbelievable. And I think in this new age of understanding statistics, you really need to split this stuff because against man, Trevor Lawrence is amazing. I mean, really, he's the top EPA in the entire league. I don't know if anyone knows that. 110 PSR, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, 7.7 YPA. Really excellent. However, versus the zone that they're probably going to see, 267 or 405, 28, 87, 8 TD, 6 picks. Slightly positive EPA, but he's 20th against his own, and I think 22nd against too high, which is what Kansas City does. So the Chiefs leading the league in too high shells. They also play a lot of nickel. So what that ends up doing, Rob, a lot of times is I think people are going to be looking for Kirk, right? Because he had that nice game. And again, you get that same idea, soft spot underneath. However, to the Andy Reid narrative, when you're 28-4 or whatever, coming off the bye, it's not an accident at a certain point, right? And it makes sense, right? It's intuition, but it's applied intuition to the point it's assertive hypothesis, right? It's not to do the old Belichick thing, take away the best weapon. He knows where he's been beat, and I think he's going to look to correct it. I don't think they're going to get beat by Kirk. The other soft spot in the too high is really the whole throw to the side, really in that intermediate spot. Yep. And I think that's where we're going to be looking. So I mentioned the Trevor Lawrence breakdown man and zone. Check it out. This is against the zone since the bye. Zay Jones has actually been the top target by far. 43 targets, 28, 3, 44, and 3. The next target earner is Kirk and Engram, both with 33. Neither have more than 280 yards. Neither have a score. And after that, it's down to 11 targets for like the Agnew and Marvin Jones bunch. So we really see a very concentrated look against the zone, meaning Lawrence knows who he's looking for. And we saw him struggle against the zone a bit with the Chargers. That's another story for the day. But I think they're going to be looking to push, given the game script, to that whole throw. And Zay Jones, this is one of the few people who have not been juiced to the gills in this 11th hour. Alt prop, 60 yards plus 115, ladder it up to 70, 178. And if you go to 80, it's around 200. And Rob, I hate to just say ladder. For me, everybody, more bets doesn't mean more risk. Let's call risk R, whether it's 10, 100, 1,000. Yep. If it's 3 levels, I like to go 0.7, 70%, 15 and 15. And if it's 2 levels, I like to go 75 and 25. The idea being, if you hit your benchmark, the baseline prop, the entire venture is profitable.
Yes.
And then you allow yourself to gain up the ladder and squeeze out those percentage points. Because a lot of times when guys go over, they go way over. We're going to talk about a few of those, so just a little bit, people are familiar to my work. Like you said, I think in this day and age, people, sometimes it's less about wanting to win big and kind of knowing how to lose correctly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely get it. I think all the rationale makes a whole lot of sense for me. I'll actually be rooting for this in some capacity because I took some Trevor Lawrence passing yards over at 242.5, which I think is up to 250, 252.5 right now.
Man.
But I mean, part of this is, for me, it's the game script for me, right?
Yeah.
I think Kansas City's going to score a lot in this game. I just don't see a lot of Jags resistance on defense. I think the things they do poorly, defending tight ends, defending running backs in the screen game, I think that's exactly how KC can just exploit them. We saw this the first time the teams played as well. Kansas City really didn't face any resistance. So I do think it gets to a point here where Jacksonville has to abandon the running game at some point and say, we need to score. So I really like that overall in terms of the regular receiving yards for Zay Jones right now, 52.5 across the board. Okay. So John's suggesting going 60.5 alternate number, playing 70% of your bet on that, and then 70, 15% of your bet, 80 plus another 15% of your bet. I like those looks. It's pretty interesting to me, John.
Yeah, I mean, again, oftentimes the player does not barely clear the prop, and taking the very same play, all the same rationale, and the same risk, more importantly, right, without over-levering yourself, you're allowing the opportunity to keep that necessary win-loss percentage, right, that all-important win-loss percentage. Listen, I want to keep it as low as possible. I don't pretend to predict the future, right? So you and I could have the same bet ticket per player, but with the same record, I could be in the black and you could be in the red, or vice versa, right? Just because of approach. So sometimes it's less about, right, the chess piece, but how to deploy it and maybe even what board to play it on.
I like that analogy right there. It's pretty solid. In the other game today, we have the Eagles and the Giants. Obviously, we don't know the health of Jalen Hurts, and that's been kind of like one of the talking points all week. He publicly said that the bye couldn't have come at a better time for him, and he's been very open that he was injured and he was dealing with something. So they do get that bye week. I can't help but think that the Giants are a little bit overvalued off of the win last week. Like, the Giants, for the vast majority of the year, were not very good. A lot of their wins just narrowly scraping by bad teams and so on and so forth. And personally, I think both sides of the ball, they looked a lot better than they actually were last week because of the Vikings and just the quality of competition that they faced. I don't know that they're going to be able to get pressure in this game on Jalen Hurts, and I don't know that they have the corners on the outside to cover these Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers. What are your looks in this game, John, for the Eagles and Giants?
Even if you do get that pressure, it doesn't mean you're going to get them down. It's a tough look. The reason I started smirking, Rob, is because, like I said, I'm trying not to geek out my fanboyness here. Working with the pizza man himself. But the idea is you're talking about a very critical theory that I bring over from trading, right? I have a trading background. And it's, in football betting, the market too often looks for continuation and perpetuity, right? An object, once it's in motion, the market expects it to continue in that way. The opposing theory is like a rectangular action, where we think of selling tops and buying bottoms rather than looking for, again, continuation, more breakout, more, where generally the NFL is a rectangle to me. When things are high, I expect them to go down. And when things are low, I expect them to go high, because there's so much parity and then injuries and all the wonkiness, refs, and all that weird stuff. So, yes, I think the public is a little too high on the Giants, who just beat a terrible defense, right? That should always be at the core of it. I wasn't trying to dogpile Minnesota this entire year, because, again, I think there is something to winning games. But the pass defense was terrible. Negative EPA per dropback, 24 completions for 266 per game, dead last in 20-yard completions, or bottom three in yards per reception. I mean, bad defenses got beat up by the Giants are a functional offense. And I think that, man, in this day and age, right, rational coaching plus functional offense has turned into wins. Like, that seems to be like at the baseline here, which maybe for all you coaches out there trying to figure out, that's all you really need. So back to the Giants, I think they're outmatched. If we knew Hurts was healthy, this probably should be double digits. And it's not just because I'm a Jet fan. I got a really good one here, Rob. So Obviously, these teams are both looking to run the ball, right? They're number 1 and 2 in rush DVOA since week 13. They're both top 10 EPA in 11 personnel and top 8 in EPA play action. And that's where I wanted to go with the Giants. The Giants offense is heavily predicated on play action because they have two very real threats to run the ball, right? And the idea being they're going to get you to overcommit. And then during that little, Houdini trick, right? I mean, he even broke out a Statue of Liberty for us the other day. The great Danny Dimes hooked us up with one of those. But here's the thing. The Philadelphia defense, they're not buying it, all right? So New York Giant offense, 3rd in the NFL in dropback percentage, play action, 34%. Philadelphia defense versus play action year to date, number 1. Check this out. This was just mind blowing. 27.7 cumulative defensive EPA against a play action. The next team are my Jets, number 2, at 12, like 42% of the total. This is unheard of. I had to go double and triple check that. So the center of that Eagles defense is legit. They're not buying what you're selling. They're also top 5 in play action, sacks, interception, and opposer passer rating. So I'm worried that Giant top 5, run game is not that necessarily. And I'm not saying what we saw wasn't real, but those two things work off each other, right? There's a real kind of symbiosis, Rob, between the play action game and the run game. And I don't think either exists without the other. And I think Philadelphia is going to take that away. This is what they do. And I didn't really realize that until diving into these playoff matchups. So I'm really worried that the Giants don't really get it off the ground. So I'm going to be looking at Daniel Jones, who the best comparison I have. I don't know if you're a Lord of the Ring guy, that wolf battering ram that's on fire. That's probably the best analogy I have for Danny Dimes right now. Just like this very orcish, but the man is incredibly hard to take down. He looks like, Ben Roethlisberger, with legs, right? With a 8-cylinder engine. So I like the Danny Jones alt prop, and this one actually moved in our direction. Woohoo! So 60 yards, people, alt rush, plus 265. Maybe I'm being a little bit greedy, and I should have shot for the 50 as well. But, man, that 60 just feels realistic, right? He handles the ball as much as everybody. He's gone over it in each of the last 2 games, not to stretch recency, but when teams want to win in the playoffs, they kind of show you what they want, right? So a quarterback is more willing to take off for the first down and risk his neck with the season on the line than he may be, sometime in August or September. So I really like the Danny Jones line. I think Philadelphia mops him up, Rob. I really do. And it's normally not my style. I normally play it to the middle. But I don't think, even with the Giants kind of finding some health late in the season, that they're going to be able to compete with the Eagles. Lane Johnson is a difference maker, right? Yeah. He's determinative, right? So yeah. I just don't think the Giants have the weapon. I think here is where the wheat and the chaff are separated. And this is not to say the Giants are bad or should be breaking it down. This is very encouraging for them. They should be building off of this going forward. I also think they become a destination for players, right? A coach showing that he's willing to buck the system and do what you need to be done to win. That said, I just think they're going to get mopped up.
I'm kind of with you. I feel like I'm going to be watching this game tonight and say to myself, wow, I missed a bet on the Eagles. Because the Hurts thing is really... It's been in the back of my head all week of do I want to be laying 7.5, 8 points with a quarterback that might potentially be hurt in this game? And that's what kept me off of it. But I just don't see the matchups for the Giants. I really don't. You look at the first time that these teams played, Saquon Barkley had only 9 rushes. Part of that was because they were trailing the entire game. But 6 of those 9 rushes came against a box of 8 or more.
I was wondering, I don't know if you take questions, but we've seen, again, these Giants have shown to be very malleable. I was wondering what you thought, Rob. Very early on in the season, you could book the Giants for league man coverage, league blitz every single week. And they have gotten away from that. The Giants, though they are still blitzing, are not playing man coverage at all. It's a different strata. They're in the bottom 10 in the last month in man coverage, something that normally is something you'd kind of base some analysis off of. And now I'm backed off a touch. And I wonder what you think. I think they'll continue to blitz. But do you think the Giants are going to bring the man pack? And if they do, then I want A.J. Brown. That's where I was going.
I want any Eagles receiver at that point. If they're going to, I don't think they're going to play as much man. They did that in the first time around and they got cooked. But I don't know what the Giants are going to do defensively because you're right. They especially last week, they slowed down with the blitzing. Dexter Lawrence in the latter half of the year has been one of the best defensive linemen in the league.
Yep.
And he's been able to generate pressure on his own through the interior. The problem is you don't generate pressure on the interior against the Eagles O-line. That's like where they hold up. And I think the Giants are going to have to try a bunch of different wrinkles in this game. Honestly, I think the Eagles are going to score, and then the Giants are going to have to flip it up, try something different. I don't know that with their personnel, I just don't think that they match up well with the Eagles personnel, however they want to play it.
So I ran the blitz numbers for, again, the degenerates out there looking to squeeze in some last bets. So this is versus the blitz, the Eagles, right? Because we're expecting the Giants to blitz. So against the Eagles, it's a lot of A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, what you'd expect. A.J. Brown against the blitz year to date, 31% team target share, 49% of the team air yards, 13.5 A-dot, 4 touchdowns. Devonta Smith, the rest of the pie, 26 target, 22 air, but 7.1 A-dot, 3 touchdowns. So I think that's kind of my answer is if we get the heavy man, anytime Hurts discerns man at the line, I think he's going to look to challenge A.J. Brown deep. And I think when he sees the Giants drop back to zone, where Jackson really did a fantastic job on Jefferson with some bracket help, even if he's on Brown, unlike the Vikings, the Eagles have another A1 threat. Listen, I hate knocking professional players, but like the Vikings, Hawkinson and Thielen are not Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert, even for that reason. But if I know they go heavy man, I like Brown. If I think they're going heavy zone, I would go Smith. So check this out. I'm going to take my risk, Rob. I'm going to split it in half on 2 alt props, not ladders. The idea being, people, is something I like to preach a lot. If we get situations like this, A or B, and both are priced up at plus 180 like they are, we only need to get one to have a nice day at the office, right? So give me A.J. Brown, 90 yards is plus 194. And or Devonta Smith plus 80 yards is 172. So if we split the risk and hit one of two, 72%, my wife will be very happy. We're going out to eat tonight.
Perfect. So just to clarify as well, on the Daniel Jones, Steven missed it, but it's over 60 alternate rushing yards, and it was plus 265 or so.
Yeah, I just saw that too. That's a fresh line, yeah.
Perfect. And then quick thoughts on Jalen Hurts rushing unders. I know we've been talking a lot in the postseason about quarterback overs in rushing yards because of exactly what you said. Just like the games are more impactful, lay it all out on the line type of situation.
Yep.
I would not. I know people are thinking the Hurts unders because he might be hurt and they might be preserving him. But push comes to shove, it's very difficult. Like if this is a close game and Jalen Hurts needs to take off, I mean, I'm not so much in love with unders in quarterback rushing yards in the playoffs, and also the possibility of kneeling the ball late in games with the favorites.
Oh yeah, that hurts.
Right.
I would say, I think you really touched on the point I would be making most, Rob, is that amount of blitzing that we're going to see, whether or not it gets home, when you put it into the game script of need this, you could just see him forcing it out. And especially, I never challenge quarterback rush unders against the potential of man defense, because sometimes that second read, the quarterback notices back's turned, right? Man covered, sometimes you get backs turned for a quarter second, and that sometimes can be the cue, right? They're given that cue. If you see names take off for the first down mark or so, especially Hurts is a running quarterback. So yeah, I don't think I would go there. Well, I wouldn't look to tempt fate. They have something to prove too. They're hungry. Yeah, I don't want that.
Agreed. I'm bringing our display names up on screen here. If you like what John's bringing here, definitely go out and follow him on Twitter at John Lageza. He does really great work in the NFL and MLB season coming up as well. I do want to get your on a different podcast at some point. I want to get your thoughts on these new Rogers Center dimensions because holy geez, are they short this year? With the way
Derek Hardy says no big deal. That's the spoiler alert. He said no big deal.
All right, let's get to tomorrow's games, John. Yeah. You messaged me earlier in the week through Twitter DM and said, I think I like the Bengals at 5.5 a little bit, but I haven't bet it yet. Little worried about the offensive line injuries for Cincinnati. Now we're out to 6. Have you bet the Bengals at +6?
No, I didn't bet the Bengals, although it's unfortunate. What I wanted to give out when I was going to refresh these lines for today, the thing that I loved is just it's out of whack, the attempts and completions for Burrow. I've been following you this week, and I've heard that come up a few times now because, again, I think that's an intuitive answer, right? Football is never as easy for me as if A, then B. We have to kind of think to, well, the counter of the counter, and he's going to fake the fake and think about faking. So we've seen Cincinnati struggle with this earlier on. We've also seen them go to these, I don't even know if you want to call it hyper usage of the shotgun. I was checking this out. I mean, they've had multiple weeks of 95% shotgun, which is basically all of it. Since week 5, Rob, they've only had a single week with less than 77% of plays in the shotgun. So they're very comfortable in it. They've also adjusted their run game, which is terrible under center. It is atrocious, putrid under center, to work under the shotgun. So it's not as if, right, if people think, wow, if he has to drop back, it's going to totally stunt the run game. No, I don't think totally. It's just not that good. And then considering the script, I'm expecting him to throw the ball all over the place. I couldn't believe that the attempts was like 35. Now it's 41. Yeah. The completions were 24. Now they're 28. And I just can't wreck that. That's a really big gap. I think the play here, and again, it's funny, Rob is always really sharp at football, people. Because we're at that critical plus 200, right? We just cracked that.
Yep.
I like to do again. I hate that it always sounds so complicated, but I like hybrid plays. Again, I never bet an underdog that I don't think can win. I don't believe in losing by a little. I don't believe in that. I only take points of a team I think feasibly can win, which I definitely think is Cincinnati can. They have a lot of very good pieces. And Buffalo gets a lot of, I don't know, what do you know? We kind of paper over a lot of their flaws and their warts, Well, and they are very good, but some quarterbacks, if they acted the way Allen did, we'd be calling them immature, wild, and irresponsible, and we don't really do that for Allen. And maybe because he's great, and I get it. Listen, superstars do get that, that kind of the past. That's what I was talking about. But what I like to do again, 75-25 splits. I don't like to get too complicated. I like to take 3/4 of my bet on the minus 110. The idea being, if you hit that, it's a 42% return back of the napkin math, and then open up the doorway if they win to cash that last quarter of a unit for half more, right? So you'd end up at almost double the same. You actually end up with this just under what you get with the money line, right? Just under, a little bit under it, while keeping the door open if they do lose, again, to 40% return, move on to the next venture, black ink greater than sign red ink, right? When you do that long enough, that kind of becomes like the lodestar of our thesis here, right?
Yeah, totally understand. Some people might have to watch that back, but I got it, John. Totally got that.
I know it's tough, man. I know it's tough. I don't make it easy. My wife will tell you, man. I never make it easy.
Well, but you know what? I do appreciate like the innovation to betting, because so many people just do the same thing over and over, right? Which is fine. And it's totally fine. Everyone's entitled to bet their own way. But if you think that you can find a certain advantage in market, or that distributions are off, or they're priced incorrectly in terms of being able to hit a longer shot on over, so on and so forth, I do like the innovation in your betting. I think it's very...
There's one more quick one to that, people. Take the spreads and do the math to the money line, because there are plenty of times where, as we know, it'll be -2 at minus 110, but the money line will be minus 130, let's say. Why would you pay a premium to have to cover those points? Not worth it. Like you have to think of the spread as an offer with the books, and I don't think people do that often enough. Right? In that example, 2 points, minus 130, minus 110. That's only $10 a point. No, you pay that juice, and I'm allergic to juice. You pay that juice because NFL points are very, very valuable, and especially in this age of going for 2 missed kicks and stuff, we don't know where it's going to land. Play for the thing that the coaches want, which is to win rather than cover.
In regards to the Bengals-Bills tomorrow, anything from a props perspective that you have your eye on that stands out? I know you mentioned like Josh Allen's been struggling as of late. Could be on the Buffalo side, could be on the Bengals side. Might just be a pass. But anything that stands out from a props perspective?
Well, I would imagine Josh Allen's going to go over his rushing yard, because I finally have given up. I did very well in them, and again, it was even with a very low win percentage, it was very profitable because I hit up the ladder. He has plenty of 75-yard rush games. Those are plus 265, similar to Daniel Jones. So it was profitable, but I'm giving up. I don't know what happened last week. He wouldn't take off, but Josh Allen rush props are always in play. To the passing game, I think I saw Samaj P. Ryan reception yards, or his receiving yards, was like 10.5.
It's now it's 12.5 across.
Okay, I think we can get that because that's a single catch. Yep. And he ran double the routes that Mixon ran last week, and that was kind of a Pianowski calls it, right, the rock fight script. Mm-hmm. So I believe if Buffalo gets ahead, right, if we do see a double-digit game script, P-Run clears this easily because I think his package use really comes to the fore. So if I had to pick one of that, but again, I like to stick to premier players, guys that are really playbook dependent, let's say. But no, I do like the pre-run over 13. I think 13 yards is a smash. He should see. You got to think he's going to run 20 routes, right?
Yep, I would agree with that. And especially with the need to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly, I could see a lot of stuff in the short passing game, lots to the running backs. So I like that look. I actually did play that look earlier in the week, but still love it at 12.5, honestly.
Isn't it something that they move 20% when you think like the number itself?
Well, that's the thing. Like some people don't realize that, and it's a slippery slope. It's dangerous when you're playing props, but I'll say like I like an Hodgins under 45.5 receiving yards, and it goes down to 42.5, and a lot of people will just go and they'll chase that, but like that's
big difference, man.
Those couple yards are a big difference when your distribution is so tight around that number. So it's the number does matter, and I preach this to the audience all the time, but I know sometimes people just want to be on the same side as other people, right? People tell me all the time, Rob, I want to bet. Just tell me what you bet. I'm like, I can't tell you what I bet because the number's different, and you're going to bet it anyways. So just the numbers matter, people, is what I'm getting at. And we got our final game this week tomorrow. Dallas San Fran. I'm really looking forward to this game overall. I played the Cowboys on the spread. I played the over in this game. We've had a lot of different guests on Forward Progress this week who've attacked things differently with the 49ers running game. Had a great interview with Hitman yesterday where he talked about liking Elijah Mitchell unders, Christian McCaffrey overs, because if you look at Elijah Mitchell's snap counts in recent weeks or over the latter half of the year, he's mostly seeing the field when the 49ers are up a lot. And in the neutral game states, Christian McCaffrey's just out there a ton. So that was one of the looks yesterday for Hitman. Anything that catches your eye here, John?
Well, again, I always like to look, where can this go wrong, right? Where can the market be wrong? Again, consolidation and people, Dallas doesn't seem to be getting this recency bias, right? They were just great. Well, they're going to regress. Okay. Isn't that funny, right? Tampa Bay spent 4 months terrible, was good for 3 hours against Carolina's okay, I guess, but not great. And we all bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And then Dallas, who's a good team, right, was rested, got healthy, went out and executed, doesn't get it. So, again, people just beware the narratives, right? Do the work, validate the work. If the math makes sense, we don't throw the balls, we don't tackle people, just let it play out, right? So how does this go wrong for San Francisco, which I really think it can? Look, Purdy has been excellent. He's executed. No one's looking to knock the young man. This is truly impressive. However, he made some really yucky throws in that last game, man. He's very lucky. He's very lucky because if one or two of those get intercepted, all of a sudden, right, we're singing a totally different tale. So it's happened. He has not played perfect. Dallas, year-to-date, number 1 in pressure rate, hurries per game, number 2 in interceptions. Brock Purdy, when pressured, Rob, 54 dropbacks, 20 of 41, 235, 3-1. That's a 49% completion percentage, an 81 passer rating, and 5.7 YPA. Not very good, right? So that's the key. Can Dallas get that pressure? That I don't know. I believe they'll get some, right? I don't think you could shut them down the entire game, right? Every snap is this war going on. It's really amazing. I'd love the all 22 for this one's going to be fantastic. So I think Dallas will get there. Will they get it in the critical spots? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. That Dallas has over pursued on the run in this season. We've seen that quite a bit. Them going air right. They kind of have this hair on fire attack on defense, and sometimes that can get you behind the running back, right? If there's any kind of counter or delay. So that's 130 rushing yards per game on the year, more than 1.5 yards before contact per rush allowed by the Cowboys. That's the leading indicator for big splash runs. So I'm going to go with Hitman. Give me McCaffrey, those rushing props. Since week 8 when he showed up, 15 attempts a game, more than 70 rush yards. The more you shrink that sample, the larger it gets as his workload has increased. And they had a couple games where, like you said, it mattered. Yep. You got to be very careful. You almost don't want to look at a McCaffrey split unless it's, like you say, within 14 points, let's say. So we don't even know what McCaffrey's usage in 4 tight quarters will look like. Almost 5 yards per rush, 10% explosive rush rate, more than 2 yards before contact per rush, right? That important stat I mentioned, and 2.6 after. Over 110 rushing yards, 4 of the last 6. So I love all this alt ladder. I just checked this. 70 was 116, 80 rushing yards was 178, 90 rushing yards for 265. Yes, y'all, and you don't stop. Give me that. So I'm going to go 70, 15, 15 again, 70, 80, 90 ladder. Again, people, I know I hate, it's worth it. That's the best that I could do. It is worth it to just put this little bit, take advantage of our ability to bet fractionally, chop those dollars up, because I'm telling you, it's worth it. Because betting profits are on the edges, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I totally understand it. Like, I personally don't do it myself enough, John, if I'm being honest with you, because it's just very quick. I like this prop. I'm going to bet it. I don't
At
really
110, though? I'm sorry, but so you'll take the juice price, or you like the next level? Like, how do you go at it? Just a straight up minus 110 prop?
Yeah, so I'll take juice prices. I'll bet into minus 110, minus 115, minus 120. Like, I'm obviously pricing my, I think probabilistically, right? So if you're going to bet into minus 110, your break-even point's 52.4%. So when I'm looking at the outcome of a prop and I'm simulating it, if I have it at 55%, yeah, I have no problem laying minus 110, right?
Okay.
So that's for me is the edge. But I'm from the school of thought where I'll bet anything if I think I have an edge. Like, I'll lay minus 300 on a baseball team if I think they should be minus 350 or minus 400.
I love it, because again, I'm always very clear about this. This is not I'm right, you're wrong. It's different, right? There are more than one way. There's multiple ways to skin that cat without scratching his behind. And I love different perspectives, right? I have a very thorough trading background. So there's been a lot of overlap, right? That Venn diagram is really very close, but it's not perfect. So I am learning from pros in the space and stuff. I just found once the games start, I feel like everything's 50-50, man. So just give me the plus sign,
Yeah, I mean, this year in the NFL, I especially felt like that. I'll tell you that I can't even tell you, the audience from Pizza Buffet will know how many times I came on here and I'm like, I just don't see how this, like, I can't see most of these teams winning by margin on the board today. Like, the gap between like number 6 in the NFL and number 21 is just like so minimal that why not take a shot with the underdogs in a lot of these situations? I think that was reflected in the underdog ATS stats this year as well. But I do appreciate you joining me here, John. Everyone, check out John Lageza on Twitter at John Lageza. He does great work for The Athletic. You can also catch him on Mail Media Network over here on YouTube. Really appreciate it, John.
Oh,
Good
man,
luck
that
with
was
your
great.
bets.
Thank you so much, Rob. You're the GOAT, man.
No problem. It's John Lageza. Great dude. Obviously, I've wanted to have him on for a long time. For all of those who've been watching, I mean, very fascinating speaker. You can see the energy he brings. But I love people who are statistically inclined. I'm not a trends-based guy. I'm not a narratives-based guy. And I think what John brings to the table is a lot of opinions that are backed by data. Love those style of thinking. So we'll have John on a lot more in the future here on the Hammer Betting Network, Forward Progress, and eventually an MLB channel as well, as I think he does some excellent work. Before I do sign off here on the Pizza Buffet presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook, if you're in Ontario and you haven't signed up for Pinnacle, go sign up for Pinnacle. You're insane if you don't. I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor, but literally low vig on games, high limits, everything you could want out of a sportsbook, Pinnacle does have it for those in Ontario. Also, on top of that, Hammer HQ tonight. Eagles, Giants, come join me. Subscribe to that Hammer HQ channel. You'll get a notification as soon as I go live tonight. I'm watching the game. It's a watch along. You can follow with me. I'm going to bring up some live bets on screen as I make them. It's a pretty fun time. Great viewership last week. Appreciate everyone who supported the Hammer. But please, if you haven't checked that out, check it out tonight. Also, last thing before I sign off here, if you haven't liked and subscribed to this piece of content in particular, smash that like button for the Pizza Buffet here on Forward Progress. Subscribe to the channel. If we get likes, we get subscriptions, we get found. The more we get found, the more content I can do. It's just like a pretty systematic process here. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, do what you can. This has been the Pizza Buffet presented by Pinnacle here on Forward Progress on the Hammer Betting Network. Good luck with your bets this weekend, everyone. Peace out.